Once upon a time, there was a young boy called Jack. He and his mother lived in a tiny cottage in a tiny village. His mother was a very poor widow who took in washing to make money, but she never made very much. Jack did everything he could do to help her. They had an old cow that gave milk, so Jack would milk her every day and walk to the market to sell the milk. One day, Jack's mother told him that they couldn't afford to keep feeding the cow, and they would have to sell her. They were desperate for money, and she was worth more than the milk she gave. Jack was very sad, but knew he had to do it. So he set off for the market, trailing the cow behind him. On the way, he met a strange little man. He was dressed all in green and was wearing a pointy hat. "Hello, Jack," the little man said. "I'd like to buy your cow." "How do you know my name?" asked Jack, astonished. "I've been waiting for you here, Jack. I know exactly what you need in return for her. These magic beans. Take them home and show them to your mother, and she will know just what to do with them." He produced a small packet of round brown beans from his pocket. "Take these beans, and all your dreams will come true." Jack was convinced that the man was telling the truth about the beans. How else would he have already known Jack's name, or that he would be selling the cow? He handed over the cow in exchange for the beans at once and skipped home. His mother was furious. "You sold the cow for beans? They're so tiny, we can't even eat them. How could you do such a reckless thing?" She snatched the beans from Jack's hand and threw them out of the window in anger. Jack was very sad. He must have been wrong about the little man, as his mother didn't know what to do with beans at all. Jack went to bed without any dinner to think about his bad decision. The next day, he woke up to a huge shadow across his room. He opened his curtains, and outside the window, where his mother had thrown the beans, an enormous beanstalk had grown. It was as thick as 4 men and rose high into the clouds, leafy and green. Jack knew he had to explore what was at the top. The little man had promised that all his dreams would come true. He packed a bag with an axe to protect himself and some food for the journey and began to climb up the beanstalk. He climbed and climbed for most of the day until he had got right over the top of the clouds. Sitting on top of the clouds was a huge house. It was as tall as 5 normal houses and just as wide. Jack crept inside and hid inside a mouse hole in the skirting board. Soon enough, he heard big thumping footsteps coming into the house. He held his breath. It was a giant. The giant was hundreds of feet tall, with hairy hands and big feet. The giant shouted in his booming voice, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." He searched around the house, looking in the cupboards and under the table, but he didn't find Jack. Soon he gave up the search and took out a huge sack of gold coins. After counting all the gold coins in his sack, the giant fell asleep in his huge bed. Jack waited a while until it was dark and crept out of his hiding place. He tiptoed over to the sack and took out a gold coin. It was the size of a dinner plate. He packed as many as he could carry into his bag, then ran from the house and climbed carefully back down the beanstalk. His mother was overjoyed to see him safely home, and even more pleased when she saw what he had brought. Jack bravely vowed to go back to the giant's house the next day to see what else he could grab. The next day he packed a bag and climbed up the beanstalk again, sneaking back into his hiding place in the giant's house. He waited until the giant returned for the evening.
Fee-fi-fo-fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread,
shouted the giant again. He still couldn't find Jack anywhere. This time the giant went outside and brought a chicken into his house. "Lay," he commanded, and out from the chicken popped a golden egg. When the giant fell asleep, Jack took the chicken and climbed down the beanstalk again. Now Jack and his mother had gold coins and a chicken that laid golden eggs. Still, Jack thought there might be more in the giant's house, so he climbed up the beanstalk for the third time. As he hid, he heard the giant's familiar words.
"Fee-fi-fo-fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread,"
he bellowed. This time, when he couldn't find anyone in his house, he took out a beautiful harp.
"Play,"
he shouted, and the harp began to play lovely music all by itself. Jack waited again until the giant was asleep, grabbed the harp, and ran for the door. "Help! Help!" screamed the harp. "Someone is stealing me!" The giant woke up and saw Jack running for the door.
"It's you who has been stealing from me,"
he roared.
"I'll squash you like a bug."
Jack ran as fast as he could to the top of the beanstalk and shimmied down it. He grabbed the axe from out of his bag and began to hack at the stalk. After a few big, hard chops, the beanstalk began to wobble and fell to the ground. The giant was trapped up in the clouds with no way down. Jack went home and hugged his mother. He took the harp from his bag and said, "I know I have stolen you, but now you live with us, and you don't have to play if you don't want to. We will never shout at you like the giant did." Then he turned to the chicken and said, "The same goes for you. You can lay when you want to lay, or not at all. We're just happy to have you here to live with us." The chicken clucked happily, and the harp played a tinkly little tune. They had never known kindness from the giant, and were very pleased to have Jack as a master now. Jack and his mother lived happily ever after on the fortune of the golden coins.
For infinity, I love you for infinity.